Today, by popular demand, I am here in Orange County, California, and I am in Laguna Beach today. And I've been wanting to come down here. And you know what's awesome is it only took me about an hour to get here from Manhattan Beach, where I'm staying. And it was a pretty easy drive, guys. You know, you hear all these horror stories about how bad California traffic is, and sometimes it is in like certain areas, but getting from Manhattan Beach to here was a breeze, I have to tell you. And if I were to drive an hour in Miami, that would probably take me to Fort Lauderdale, which is a much closer distance, and I would argue that the traffic is even worse over there. But today I'm going to take you guys through this hilltop neighborhood here that kind of overlooks the ocean over there, and we're going to talk about who's going to be the first to sell, guys, because you know, the number one thing that this housing market needs right now to get back to any sort of normal is inventory. And there's been a lot of speculation on who's going to budge. Is it going to be the buyers? Is it going to be the sellers? Well, one thing we know is the buyers can't budge because the buyers are tapped out, okay? At these prices and interest rates, the buyers have no room left to go. So that only leaves the sellers. And the question is, who's going to sell first? There was a survey done by Zillow recently, and they determined that any current homeowners that have a 5% mortgage rate or higher are twice as likely to sell than somebody who has a 5% or less mortgage rate. And as of right this moment, as of me making this video, about 80% of mortgages throughout the entire country have a rate that's below 5%. And about 1/3 of homeowners currently have a rate that's below 3%, at 3% or below. And this makes perfect sense, right? Because the people that have the low rates don't really want to give them up in lieu of having a higher rate and move to somewhere else and go from a 3% rate to 7% rate or even higher now, really. But the people that are paying 5 or maybe 6% might not feel as strongly about it because their payments aren't going to be going up as much as somebody else who has a 3% rate. And one thing that they captured in this survey from Zillow is that 23% of homeowners plan to sell their homes in the next 3 years, which is up from 15% a year ago. And I'd be willing to bet as economic conditions continue to worsen throughout the rest of this year and into next year, that number is going to go up even higher, guys. I bet you it's going to be well over 30% of people planning on listing a home within the next 3 years. And like I keep telling people, we are going to get inventory. It's not like we're not going to ever have inventory again. It's just going to take time, right? Because people move and life goes on no matter what. And to say that everybody that has a 3% mortgage rate is never going to sell is just ridiculous, guys. That's not what drives the housing market. It's not like mortgage rates are the key determining factor of whether or not people need to move or things happen in their life. Yes, it is a factor of maybe I should hold on to this property, maybe I should turn it into a rental if I can, but not everybody can afford to do that, and not everybody wants to do that. And honestly, because buyers are so locked out of this market right now, many people are choosing to rent, not just because they have to, but also because it's cheaper. In fact, right now, in 45 of the 50 biggest cities throughout the United States, it is actually cheaper to rent than it is to buy. I think you're going to see this be the case for quite some time until the housing market really starts correcting and you start seeing these prices come down, because we know the interest rates aren't going to budge much, at least from now until maybe the spring of next year. If there's any sort of Fed pivot, it probably won't be until then, unless all hell breaks loose and the entire economy starts falling apart at rapid pace. And the funny thing is, I've heard people say in the comments, and I see in these news stories sometimes too, like, home buyers just need to adjust to these new rates. It's the new normal, right? It's just going to take time, and the housing market's not going to go down because, you know, once buyers adjust to these new rates, then everybody's going to be fine and be comfortable buying with a 7.5% or 8% mortgage rate. But that's a huge lie. And the reason why is because all we have to do is look at mortgage applications, guys. Mortgage applications are still at a 20-something year low right now. And if buyers were starting to adjust and accept these new mortgage rates and were just choosing not to buy because they didn't want a 7% mortgage, you would start seeing this go back up by now, because rates are not going down. They're just continuing to go up. So the big problem is that buyers cannot afford to accept these current mortgage rates as the new normal, because it's not really the rates that's killing the deal. It's the prices combined with the rates. It's a combination of both, right? So one or the other needs to give in order for affordability to come back into play for people. So it's not a matter of accepting the fact that it's 7% mortgage rates. It's the fact that you're priced out. You can't buy with a 7% mortgage rate and a $450,000 price tag on the house. And honestly, I think renting right now is just a no-brainer for a lot of people in a lot of different places. Like, since I've been here in California, I've been looking around at what homes cost here and what the rents cost here, and it is staggering, the difference, guys. Like, it is so far away from reality as far as like the cost to rent versus own here is not even on the same planet. Like, literally buying a place here in California is probably at least 3 or 4 times more expensive in most areas than it is to rent when we're talking about your monthly payment. So here in California, I feel like in many places, it's a no-brainer to be a renter because you save a ton of money and you can live in much nicer areas here if you're renting than if you were to try to buy something. And most people realistically probably can't even buy something. So unless you're like trying to get some tax write-offs, I don't see the benefit of buying real estate in these super expensive places like this. Hey, how you doing?
How you doing?
Is your house for sale?
Yep.
You mind if I film it and put it in my YouTube video?
Yeah.
It's okay?
Yeah.
All right. I'm just going to film it then and put it in my video later. The owner of this house was a super cool guy, and I was happy to meet him and chat with him. And he's listing this house at $3.8 million. They've been trying to sell it since September of 2022. They originally started off at $4.3 million, took it off the market and lowered the price, took it off the market and lowered the price. Unfortunately, this tactic really never works. Just listing it at the right price to begin with usually is a better tactic to sell. But hey, I'm not the real estate agent here. I'm just commenting on it. You think you're going to sell it soon?
I would not be surprised.
Have you had any offers yet? Yeah?
But we're pretty marginally flexible in the price, but not much. So,
How long have you lived here?
40 years.
Oh, wow.
North Laguna, right in here, is one of the most sought after areas in Laguna Beach. So that helps. I mean, everybody wants to be in North Laguna.
Yeah, man, it's a beautiful location. You got the view here. You got the beach right down there, downtown.
And we don't deal with the tourists. I mean, we don't have to go down that way to get out. We can go right up Newport Coast and take up north and just blow town if we want to. So
yeah.
It's very convenient location.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay.
It's good to meet you.
Good to meet you. Good luck, huh?
Thanks. Well, that was really cool of Paul to talk to me like that. That's an unexpected turn in the video. So here's the thing, guys. Renting right now, on average across the country, will save you about $174 a month versus buying, which some people might say, well, that's still a close enough gap where I'd rather still buy. And maybe that makes sense for some people, and I get that. But in other areas, the gap is just tremendous, right? Like in Miami, where I live, the gap is huge, but here it's far greater. I mean, you're looking at, you could probably rent one of these houses for like $6,000, $7,000 a month, maybe a little bit more than that. But to buy one of these houses, you're looking at like a $25,000 a month house payment. That's totally unreachable for practically everybody. You know what I'm saying? And this is ultimately how people end up house broke or house poor. You've probably heard that phrase before. And basically what it means is you're working just to pay off your house and you really don't have a lot of money left over for anything else. And this is a miserable situation to find yourself in. And this is unfortunately where I think a lot of buyers are going to end up if they're looking at buying under today's prices and conditions, because they just don't have the patience to wait for things to come down a little bit. Because even Robert Schiller, like I talked to you guys about a couple days ago, he even thinks that the housing market's going to come down by at least 10% within the next 2 years, guys. So a 10% discount is not a huge amount, but it's better than nothing, right? And chances are, in 2 years from now, interest rates might be a little bit lower than they are today. So if we get a 10% discount on prices plus lower rates, you're still going to be looking at paying less than you'd be paying right now. So first of all, I don't even know how people can end up house broke, because the lenders are supposed to qualify people based on their income and not give out loans for more than a prescribed amount, right? Most buyers right now are spending roughly half of their monthly income on their house payment. They have debt to income ratios of about 42%, and that's based on their gross income. So in reality, the debt to income ratio is more like 50% of their take home pay. So they're spending 50% of their money on their house payment. And that is probably the definition of being house poor. You know, just a little bit ago, we were talking about how, where are the new listings going to come from, right? Like, who's going to end up selling first? And it's more than twice as likely that someone with over a 5% rate will sell before someone with a 3% rate, which makes total sense. And you know what else makes a lot of sense is it's a lot more likely that someone who's house poor is going to sell before someone who isn't. And in fact, look at this, 27.4% of all homeowners in the United States right now are house poor, according to a June 2023 study by the Chamber of Commerce. Now, that's a huge amount. In fact, that's more people than the people who are even saying that they wish to sell over the next 3 years voluntarily, guys. So here's the problem. When people are house poor and they're spending so much on their house payment, if anything goes wrong in terms of having unexpected expenses they can't pay for, a job loss, or some sort of loss of income in any way, this can totally derail someone in that situation. And you know, we're seeing more things like this happen in the economy. I mean, look at the yellow trucking company that just went out of business, guys, which I'm going to cover more in a later video. But they just went out of business and 30,000 people got laid off just like that. So if any of those people are house poor and they're spending about half their income on their house payment, and they don't have any reserves and savings, guess what they're going to be doing pretty soon? You're going to be seeing a for sale sign in their front yard, unfortunately, but that's the way it goes. And under this same survey of people who are house poor, 48% of Americans right now are saying that their financial stress has increased since this time last year. Why is that? Oh, maybe because inflation is still too high and things cost too much and people are not getting the wage increases that they need to keep up with it. Maybe it's that. Ever thought of that? And in a different survey from Bankrate, 41% of homeowners say they have regrets on how much it costs to maintain the house, because between the hidden costs of maintenance and the problems that come up with owning a home have been more than they expected, and they regret buying the house because of that reason. And this is something that I've warned people about time and time again on the channel, but I guess it's one of those things that no one's going to listen to until it's too late, really. You know, they're going to have to go through this the hard way, I guess, because you have so many people. Like, I see it in the comment section. I can see the mentality of the people that think housing will never go down, guys, that this is going to be some sort of perpetual bull market run in the housing market forever, and it will just continue to increase. And the reality is, the only way that that's possible is people make a lot more money, okay, in order to compensate for these higher interest rates and home prices, combined with most likely additional government stimulus. That would be the only scenario where a situation like that could actually play out and we don't see home prices come down. It just continues to go up. And the other problem is people just don't take into consideration all the additional expenses that come along with home ownership. You know, they get qualified for the mortgage based on the payment today, but they don't factor in increasing property taxes. They don't factor in HOA fees going up and utilities going up, special assessments if you're in an HOA community, like all these different things, you know, increases in insurance, all these problems that can happen when you become a homeowner that you don't have to deal with as a renter. So I just think the whole prospect of renting right now is more appealing. Like, if I could find something similar to where I live right now and rent it for less, I would do it, guys, and I would rent my place out. But that would mean that I wouldn't be able to get the amount of rent that I would need to rent my place out for that to work, right? So that's why, depending on where you live, owning can still be the better prospect for people. But it really depends on where you live and how much it costs to rent versus own in your area. Now, this house has a history so long I can't even put it all in, but right now they're asking $11,000 a month for rent, a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house, and you can see just how far down this list of history goes for this property of listing this place for rent, sometimes getting it rented, sometimes not. But the last time they rented it was in April of 2022 for $9,500 a month. Now they got it at $11,000 a month, and it's only been on the market for a few days, so maybe they'll get it. It's a $1,500 a month increase, which is a lot of money, don't get me wrong, But yeah, I don't know, guys. I mean, that's a lot of money to spend on rent. But when you look at the alternative of paying 30 grand a month to buy this type of house, I guess in that regard, it's a bargain. And one way you can know right away if you are house poor without even looking at the numbers is if you're constantly feeling strapped for cash. If you feel like you can never afford anything and you just don't have any money left over at the end of each month after paying all the bills or very little, or you're finding yourself having to go into debt to cover regular household expenses, you're house poor, guys. That's the definition of it without putting any financial definition to it. And what some people are doing is they're pretty much gambling right now. They're, taking on these high house payments, and they're betting on the fact that their income's going to continue to go up every year, and basically they'll be able to grow into the house payment. That is a huge mistake, but people do it. And the funny thing is, if your income goes up, you can pretty much guarantee that the expenses related to the property are going to continue to go up as well. So, okay, your income's going up. That doesn't help a whole lot if you have higher property taxes, higher insurance, higher HOA dues, and you had to, make some unexpected repairs that cost another 10 grand. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, you made more money, but you spent it all. Maybe you even went in the hole. Who knows? Now, how about this one, guys? The federal government is looking at ways to incentivize people to sell their homes because the housing market is so tight. So yes, once again, they're looking at getting involved in the private real estate market and meddle in things. But what they're looking to do is basically find ways to pay people to list their homes for sale. And it's funny that this is something that they're actually considering and tossing some ideas around on, because one of my viewers from a while ago, I still remember, mentioned this as an idea. His name is Daniel, and I think he brought it up last year even, that the government should try to do something like this. So similarly to back during the 2008 housing crisis, what they did back then is the economy was so much in the tank that they gave people an incentive to buy a home, right? They gave first-time home buyer tax credits. Well, basically this would be the opposite of that, and giving sellers a tax credit to sell their house. They're looking at doing this in a couple different methods. One that they're looking at doing is they're looking at doubling the capital gains exclusion on primary residences. And right now, the bill has 15 co-sponsors from both parties, both Republican and Democrat. So basically how this would work is currently, if you are a single filing taxpayer and you make more than $250,000 on the sale of your home, then any overage over the 250 grand is taxed at capital gains rates. And the same is true for a married couple that makes over a $500,000 profit. So what they're looking to do is double these numbers, so where it's $500,000 for a single filer and $1 million for a married couple. And they think this would get a lot of people off the sidelines that don't want to take that huge tax hit right now, because apparently the logic behind this too is a lot of older homeowners are basically on the sidelines right now because they're living in a big house. They basically have this empty nest, but under the current tax law, they would pay capital gains tax. Instead, what they're deciding to do is transfer the property to one of their relatives when they pass away to have less of a tax hit. So people are choosing to stay in homes right now, not because they want to, but because they don't want to pay the taxes and fees that are going to come along with selling the house. And this is a big problem when you look at the fact that 56% of homeowners right now are older than the age of 55. And just a decade ago, that number was 48%. So the amount of 55 and older homeowners is dominance right now in the US housing market. And it's more than half, guys. And since they're not turning over the supply like in so many decades past, then this is causing this supply constraint. This is something I've talked about many times before. It's not like there's a huge shortage of homes in the US. It's just that there's a shortage of homes for sale at the moment. All this inventory's here, but it's just locked up at the moment. So it's estimated if they were to double these capital gains exclusions, then just in the first year alone, then that would create anywhere between 159,000 and 344,000 new listings for sale in just the first year, guys. So whether or not that's actually the case, I don't know. But I think they should definitely look at doing something like this, because why not, guys? They tax us enough on everything anyways. And if that's gonna unleash some inventory, that's exactly what the housing market needs. I'm not someone that's a huge fan of the government intervening in our private affairs, but giving people a tax break to sell a house isn't much of an intervention. It's more of an incentive to sell, which I think some people probably need right now. And another proposal on the table is giving a homeowner who's lived in the house for at least 20 years a $25,000 tax credit to sell their house. And they believe that sort of tax credit situation would bring on anywhere between 300 to 640,000 new homes for sale just in the first year, guys. Now, these are big numbers when you look at the fact that we only have about 500,000 homes for sale in the entire US housing market right now. These tax incentives were to come true, this would actually do its part in helping tank the housing market in reality, because now we would be back up to pre-pandemic inventory numbers within just a year. They're even looking at giving capital gains exclusions in the magnitude of 50% reduction in capital gains tax for small-time landlords who sell single-family rental properties to first-time home buyers. And they think a measure like that would bring anywhere between 67,000 and 146,000 new listings to the housing market. And basically a small-time landlord would be somebody who owns 5 properties or less. So no corporate landlords would be getting a tax break here, which is also a good thing. And basically how these would work is it would be a temporary thing. There would be a deadline, like you need to list and sell your home by X date in order to qualify for this tax credit. Otherwise you just don't. And that would be how they would basically push people over the edge into doing this. During the last housing crash, this actually worked, guys, because when the tax credits were about to expire back in 2010, you saw huge spikes in the amount of home sales in the months before the tax credits expired. So I don't know, let me know what you guys think, if this is a good idea or not. Now, obviously, home builders are still going to be building homes, and we're still going to be seeing brand new houses come to the market and more inventory that way. But do you think it's a good idea for the government to meddle in this, create tax incentives for people to sell? I mean, personally, here's my thoughts. Like, I feel like it won't be necessary because I feel like a bad economy will do that for us. But if they want to expedite things and, you know, create more listings coming on the market sooner rather than later, then this would be the way to do it. I'm never against the government giving us, the people that pay already too much taxes, a tax break, because I feel like we could use more tax breaks, not less. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.